She should have known something was wrong when she decided to splurge on some raspberries. Getting them out of season didn't raise any alarms. No, that was one of the fun parts of the world she lived in. One of the small things that made December of 2024 a tiny bit less hellish. Instead, when she checked out, the cashier scanned them, opened the package, and popped a single raspberry into her mouth before closing it. As Hannah Boswell tried to comprehend what she saw, the woman behind the counter rang up her groceries and happily chewed. It almost made Hannah not want the raspberries, as if they had been tainted somehow. But since starting her doctorate program, she felt malnourished. She'd get out of a lab at some ungodly hour, stuff her face with whatever was at hand, then crash out before work. It got to the point where she forgot what day it was, what hour, what month, and where she was going, or why. She even broke her no fast food rule. Just about everyone she told about her last-minute lab, her program manager sent her to, tried not to laugh at her. To be fair, she tried not to laugh either. A quiet hospital in the quiet corner of Connecticut didn't seem like the worst spot on the planet. She didn't even think there was a hospital around there besides Wyndham. Her program director's habit of changing her schedule seemed like it would stick for the entirety of her doctorate program. Once she got moved to a last-minute pediatric hospital well across the state from where she thought she'd be going. It was a weird day. She wound up kicking it with the clown for a few hours as there was not much to do, since nobody planned on her being there. A few lights dotted around the hospital in that foggy December morning. The squat brick hospital atop a hill hadn't seemed to quite waken up yet. It smelled like it would rain. She swore she felt tingles on her skin graft heralding its coming. The year was about to end in a few weeks, but it had to be too miserable, too warm, and too damp the entire time it was letting out its dying breath. As she got out of her little economy car, she sent a text to her friend, apologizing in advance if she missed their semi-weekly girl dinner together. They understood that she was in the sticks at the very least. She checked her phone, saw the email from her program director, and rolled her eyes. If she wound up in another slab lab, she'd blow a gasket. By the time she entered the lobby, she realized how strange hospitals were set up. The linoleum floors had dust in the corners. The glass reflected dim fluorescent lights. Even the fake plants were vaguely reflective. Along the walls, there were portraits of various white dudes staring out into nothing. The last of them gave her some pause, as the way he stared out made it seem like his gaze followed her as she awkwardly walked to the front desk. An older couple were before her, seemingly asking if they were in the right spot for whatever it was they came in for. It didn't take long for Hannah to get waved down by a man with slicked back, blonde hair, and shades. He seemed to be dressed like a security guard, or he was fond of mixing light and midnight blue.
Are you Hannah?
Oh, good. I'm in the right spot.
The man didn't seem to know how to respond to that without saying no shit. Apparently a polite, humoring smile might crack his face apart, or at the very least kill his aesthetic.
Yeah, Hannah Boswell. I'm here to see Dr. Spencer for a lab. It was kind of last minute.
Oh, sure. We're expecting you.
He nudged his head to indicate the direction. The regret that he didn't say the clinical had been canceled and she could bounce didn't linger overly long. No, the fact that the security guy met her sort of rubbed her the wrong way, but she couldn't say why.
So what's he working on?
I have no idea. It's above my pay grade.
She didn't know why she bothered trying to fish any information out of him.
Working right out of a hospital is kind of nice.
They're under budget. They're more or less just renting space for him to work.
That got her to slow her step a bit. They? Why was there a they? And if there was a they, who the hell was this guy?
Who's paying the bill?
It's semi-independent. I'm lost when it comes to money stuff.
Yeah, I can't even balance a checkbook.
She suddenly pulled out her phone and sent a quick text to one of her friends with 3 exclamation marks. It was probably nothing, but she wanted to raise some kind of alarm. It might have been nothing. Then over her lunch of raspberries and a sandwich, she could laugh about it with her friends. Then she'd get teased over it during their semi-weekly girl dinner. They got to the end of a fairly generic hospital hall that didn't have the last light on before a set of reinforced doors.
Right in here.
She hit send and walked past a mostly derelict nurse's station behind a set of doors. What this wing had been didn't jump out to her immediately. The fact that most of the rooms were boarded up or covered in tarps didn't sit great with her either. Logical parts of her brain told her that it was nothing but renovations.
Sparing no expense.
Not a penny.
She had to do a double take at another security guard coming around what used to be the nurse's station. The 2 guards were nearly identical, right down to the silly hairdo and cheap shades.
You know, I forgot something in my car.
The clinking of a lock behind her put the kibosh on that.
Is this a joke?
The 2 identical men were only slightly hard to take seriously, mostly since they were trying too hard. They might as well have been cracking their knuckles and cackling menacingly.
Give us your phone and your backpack. The walls are soundproofed.
Hey, so this is probably going to go really bad for you guys. You might just want to take the L on this one.
She pocketed her phone and dug out her keys. So far, she'd been in 0 fights in her life. That spat with clot and the slime doesn't count. There was always a chance that the 2 men would see reason and not indulge in the tacit approval for their baser nature. And if anything, they had already seemed taken back by her attempt to smack talk. And yeah, it was 2-on-1, but she had pepper spray.
Take the L. Fuck this, grab her. My shades. Oh, fuck. What was that? Fucking pepper spray.
Fuck you.
I can't see what I'm holding.
Dickhead.
You got her leg. Just hold. Alright, there. Don't let go. Fuck. Stop fucking kicking me.
Hannah felt herself get hoisted up to her feet with her hands tied behind her.
You're so fucked. You guys are fucking doomed.
Looking in on the whole thing was a short man with black hair streaked with gray. In a white lab coat and ill-fitting slacks, he came around the desk once it seemed safe enough to do so.
Take her bag. Take her phone.
Hannah shifted her weight, pulling the heel of one of her sneakers with the other foot. She shoved against the men's grip as one of the guys reached into her pocket to snap her phone.
Hannah Boswell. It's been quite some time.
She really tried to place where she'd seen this jackass before. Granted, he did look familiar. Not quite thin, not quite fat, not quite tall, not quite short, not handsome, slightly off-putting, but far from ugly. His angular face seemed a bit too much like a caricature of a celebrity she never bothered to learn the name of. Something about his dye job distracted her too much from putting the details together into a clear picture.
I have no idea.
I'm Dr. Spencer Wu. You worked under me in the lab. Are you joking?
Hannah kicked up, sending her sneaker into the man's chest. He lurched back as the security guard yanked her arms.
Is this a joke to you?
I'll get the last laugh, and I didn't work under you. I worked under Dr. Stanley. You were, working on immunosuppressants, right?
I was still a doctor, and you were just a peon.
Is that what's important to you? Where you fit into the pecking order? What? Now you work semi-independently just to be a bigger fish in a polluted pond?
He took a step closer, unable to help grandstanding.
No, it's not that. It's about the great work to the...
He took another step closer and she spat. In furious shock, he stared at her and wiped some of the spit off his face. He got right up to her and started bringing his closed fist downs on her in the most petulant and weak series of punches Hannah had ever seen. He brought his hands down in small, hammering smacks on her shoulder and head. The fact that they hurt a little was only an afterthought with how bad his form was.
Shit, take her down.
She peeked up to see him rubbing his wrist, and to think she probably could have gone another 2 rounds against him.
By myself? Is that a good idea?
The doctor did a double take at the thoroughly blinded security goon, like it didn't matter all that much to him one way or another.
Yeah, it's fine.
Hannah rolled her eyes at that. Then it occurred to her that these dipshits were taking up an awful lot of real estate in a nearly derelict hospital.
With the other subject, where are we putting her?
Hannah perked up at that. In her mind, she was either going to wait for another doctorate student or one of her friends to call somebody, and she'd be set. Or she was going to use the remaining shoelace to cut through the zip ties, and then dip out of there when they were inevitably distracted. But more likely some combination of those plans. Either way, they were half-assing too much to keep her trapped there for long. But then they just had to say that. They just had to tip their hand, which meant the test changed curriculum.
Lab 1. Let's not overcomplicate things.
The doctor rubbed his knuckles as Hannah cackled at him. She spat blood drizzling from her nose onto the floor as she was pulled away.
Why are you laughing? You're not more trouble than you're worth.
And you can't see an inch in front of your face.
What does that mean, exactly? Whatever. Fuck you.
She felt herself dragged backwards into an elevator. One of the security guards hit the basement button, and she watched the doctor through the door for a full 20 seconds before it closed. Around 15 seconds into that, the doctor stormed off petulantly. The door wasn't the only thing that was slow. The elevator descended down 1 floor, but she swore scaling the entirety of City Place wouldn't take that long.
Hey, Shades, did you and him pick him out at the same time, or did you both show up?
Oh my god, can you please shut up?
The doors finally opened to show her a dull blank hallway painted gray and white. Even fluorescent lightings covered most of it. The mix of antiseptic, paint, and what seemed like a barbecue were far too off-putting when they were mixed together. More doors were boarded up or covered in tarps, and that wasn't the worst of it. A burnt section of the floor had something caked to it. If she wasn't mistaken, there were bolt holes in the walls and floor. She couldn't figure out how old those were, like if the place had been abandoned for that reason or if these dipshits had an incident. She spared a thought to wonder how well sound traveled in a place like that once more. It seemed as though some doors were not blocked off by plywood or tarps. The ones that weren't had plastic plaques on them before thick metal doors. And sure enough, she was going into Lab 1. She couldn't for a second believe this was an actively used hospital. That above her, nurses, patients, and all other sorts of people milled about. It made her wonder if the place was actually soundproof or if the guy was grandstanding. Again. The security guy opened the unlocked door. She saw cabinets of an off-green lining a wall above a counter. 2 hospital beds sat against the wall, though one didn't even have a plastic mattress on it. Biohazard boxes were stacked along another wall. One was open, which managed to annoy her. She saw needles and IV bags laid on a table, next to a metal cabinet, which she guessed was likely filled with drugs. And they had a cooler, which she doubted was filled with anything to drink. She got shoved onto a hospital bed where she settled in, and kicked up one of her legs over the other. She watched the security guard do mental math as he studied some restraints that hospitals carried. He couldn't restrain her properly by himself.
You get out of there, and I'm beating you within an inch of your life.
What's your name?
Shut up.
You have a bad attitude.
He scowled and walked to a stool where he sat heavily. Hannah rolled her foot as she thought things over. Yeah, it looked really bad, but doomed or fucked, all those words were a little too definitive.
Hey, Hannah?
That's me.
Hannah sat up to see a well-appointed woman not that much older than her. Her lab attire was pretty innocuous, but her sequined Vans sneakers caught Hannah off guard. But damn if they weren't the right combo of tacky and spectacular. The thin Caucasian woman didn't seem to notice anything was wrong one way or the other. The slight tinge of deodorant didn't match whatever lotion she chose. Behind her thick glasses, she seemed mildly checked out. She snapped on a pair of rubber gloves and got annoyingly close.
Don't get too close.
Oh, it's fine. I'm Dr. Rachel Edmond. I'll be overseeing your skin grafts.
I mean, I already have them.
They healed remarkably well.
The doctor pulled her face a bit to see the patch of flesh underneath Hannah's ear that had the new skin attached to it. Hannah pulled her chin away when the doctor began to pinch the skin, that still seemed a little too tight and light compared to the rest of her.
It took a while. They got infected and it was a whole ordeal.
They got infected?
Immunosuppressants are a double-edged sword like that. Yeah.
Prednisone is like that sometimes.
It was methotrexate.
The doctor gave a short exhale at being corrected.
Yeah, they're fine now. They still itch every so often.
Did they attach the nerve endings?
Under the larger portions they did. It feels weird. Like they're cold sometimes. I get this phantom itch or pinch sometimes. Creepy.
Frigid latex-wrapped fingers nudged Hannah's head down and felt the back of her head. She didn't actually know that much about the grafts. They were explained to her when she was very high on a series of medications the doctors gave her. And by the time they got infected, she got another round. When it was all said and done, she didn't know if it was another person's skin or her own grown in a dish.
But there is hair growing there.
Once more, the woman started prodding the skin. Hannah talked herself out of strangling the doctor, or using her as a human shield to get out.
I can't figure that part out. There are, but it's thicker. Can I help you?
Hannah felt her pull the back of her shirt out, and the top portion of her spine get poked at. If she got any lower, she'd start working out some knotted muscle that had been giving her some issues.
And an acid burned you?
Yeah, slime, mold. It was the whole thing.
Hannah glanced away, noticing a ludicrous amount of IV pulls in the corner of the room. She just knew that somewhere in the hospital, someone needed to set up a drip of Dilaudid, and some poor nurse couldn't find a pole to hang it from. But also, if the pulls were any closer, she'd bash Rachel upside the head.
Sounds it. Well, the biopsy will tell us more.
The doctor stepped back and began to remove her gloves. The way Dr. Rachel looked at her seemed too far off, too disconnected. Hannah was a 500-piece puzzle to this woman.
I'm going to get coffee since it's way too early to think.
Tell me about it. So what's the end goal?
It's the whole thing, the great work. You know how it goes.
Yeah, great work. Great all around. Good job.
Rachel's light brown eyes shrank into pinpricks. She might as well have shouted, "Well, what do you know?"
I find this all pretty grating.
Hannah passively watched the woman step out and away from the lab. The security guard checked out Dr. Rachel's backside without a hint of subtlety. With an eye roll, Hannah settled back and went to contemplating her lot in life. She could, 200%, body the fuck out of Dr. Rachel if given the opportunity. And that quickly got moved to Plan B. Then with some more thought, it became part of Plan A. Then after even more thought, it got moved back to Plan B. Plan C involved sharp objects. But without shoes, she wasn't going to run too well on linoleum floor, which meant she needed some kicks, or to deal with the security pricks, or both.
Wow, look at that.
Listen up, alpha males. Situational awareness.
Peeking up, she saw the security guy on his phone. As she turned up and over, she got her shoelaces untied. She looped her arms down while her foot went up. She looped the laces around the zip ties and began moving. She peeked up to see the security guy itching his thigh in a way that made her think that he was subtly itching his balls.
Do you have thinning hair?
Modern attention spans.
Can your dog turn green?
She felt the zip tie snap, and her hands could move. Without any care for legerdemain, she popped out of bed and sat on the ground with her hands behind her, as the security guy got up.
Sorry, I had to use the bathroom.
You fucking moron.
He got right over her, his hands under her arms, which got her to smile. Pulling her hands up, she gripped the sides of his head and slammed it as hard as she could into the hospital bed over her shoulder, where his knees went limp. Falling back, but somehow catching himself, he partially stood, his hands madly darting around for where his shades went. He swayed back a few steps before staggering onto the chair he'd been sitting at. His other hand pulled away to show blood and a severe bruise. He sat, missed a chair, and wound up on the ground.
How'd this chair get here?
So she gave some dude a concussion. She could wrestle with that guilt later. Without sparing a second to feel great about her plan, she got up and kicked off her shoe. She looped his hands behind him and tied him up.
Stop.
His phone was locked, so there went that idea. His driver's license said his name was Jason, but she hoped to find an employee ID of some kind. It would be a key, but no luck there either. She stood when she heard footsteps echo. So much for soundproofing. She had the restraints the security loser had and settled against the wall next to the door. With a seething amount of tension, she waited a few seconds until Rachel got back into the room with a mug of coffee. She stopped guessing if this was plan A or B.
Where?
Hi.
Hannah tied off the shiny Vans and rolled her ankle along. It helped that they were about the same shoe size. They were far more ostentatious than anything Hannah would wear normally, which, considering she was in lab-appropriate clothes that day, seemed sort of fitting.
Did you have to tie me to this?
Don't struggle too much. Have you ever heard of rhabdo?
I am not kidding, you fucking mongrel.
Hannah stood, feeling to give it the sneakers. Not enough art support, but whatever.
I haven't worn Vans since college. Do you remember those shoes with the big front part? Osiris? Oh man, when is that trend coming back?
The bed rattled as Rachel yanked her arms forward. She kicked her legs under her and found that standing wasn't really an option.
Rhabdo, cut it out.
I know what fucking rhabdo is. You cannot be serious.
She finally faced back to Dr. Rachel, tied to the railing of the bed. She flexed, but the restraints held up.
What was that about your good work?
The great work, dumb bitch.
Hannah rolled her finger along.
Solve et coagula. Duh.
She rolled her finger along once more. Giving it some severe thought, Hannah wasn't sure why, but she expected them to have an actual answer about anything. But more specifically, she wanted to know why they bothered with her. Dr. Spencer worked at the same company that she tried to fuck over. Sure. So there was some motive there. But it seemed like whatever damage they could have done, she'd already did. Then there was whatever they could be researching there on a semi-independent, off-the-books lab with another hostage.
Are you joking?
You'd know if I was.
Alcahest. Solve et coagula. Do I need to spell it out? I'll show you exactly what I've accomplished. It'll be the last thing you see.
Instead of her mind going blank, Hannah envisioned what Rachel must be like in the real world.
Okay, who's the other captive?
Why do you care?
Who are they?
Some geezer. We need his DNA for the project. So far, the results are mixed. We're supposed to get a CSF biopsy. Fuck you. You had to do all this.
If you're taking his spinal fluid, then apparently I did. Where is he?
I'm not telling you anything.
Fair enough. I just have to look through 4 labs.
The recollections of the burns and bullet holes in the walls came to mind once more. There was a chance the other captive would be too injured to move at the time being, or that something much worse was going on there. Hey, at least she had shoes to run.
Unless you want to explain what semi-independent means. Who's funding all this?
I don't know.
She was a bad liar, but it didn't entirely matter just then.
Want to hear a joke?
Rachel glared at her, unwilling to humor anything she had to say. Hannah grinned as friendly as she could.
Help!
A clump of linen went into her mouth. Maybe the place was really soundproof. Hannah strolled out of the lab like she'd nailed it. She stepped down to the hall and turned left. The elevator, the slow piece of crap it was, stood in the middle of the wall. Beside it was a stair entrance and another boarded-up room. To her right were 3 more labs, a bathroom, and an operation theater, all helpfully marked out with plastic plaques. She tasted antiseptic and dust when she heavily sighed and went across the hall.
We don't have milk.
Is this going to work?
Spencer studied the sugar cookie-flavored coffee creamer with sheer certainty. The makeshift security office, which made his allergies go haywire, had enough of the amenities set up already. Science, like most industries really, were powered by caffeine. Their expensive-ass coffee maker, several bags of specialty coffee, and niche little espresso maker notwithstanding. They also happen to have an inordinate amount of energy drinks, but no milk.
Yeah, it'll be fine.
Everyone remaining there had to move their offices up by the security desk. There were no exceptions. Even Spencer, who was miles less freaked out than the security guys, made it a point to move his computer and his books up. So far, it was only Rachel dragging her shiny little Vans. He had a view of the security cameras set up in the basement, and the one facing out of the front doors. For whatever reason, looking at the basement through a screen made him feel a little bit more unnerved than being down there himself, and yet he tried to tell himself that that feeling was irrational. If only everyone there could get on the same goddamn page while they were crammed together. It wasn't like their money was limitless, nor was their benefactor's patience, or even the hospital owners getting sick of their shit. He at least hoped that getting the whistleblower out of the way before the court case in Oakson was going to buy him some good graces with the people who mattered in the company. So far, she was a pain in the ass. But going through her bag proved fruitful enough, mostly since he stole some raspberries she brought for lunch. He'd forgotten how much he liked them, considering the last time he tried to buy some, the cashier reached in and took one. Plus, not for nothing, he was at least glad the security guy was too blind to notice and ask for one.
Fucking, are you sure?
You'll live. If she wasn't, no.
He nearly spat out a raspberry.
Huh? What?
Dr. Spencer Wu scrambled to the intercom system and flipped it on. The security guy spilled coffee creamer onto the carpet as he tried to see what the heck was up. Metaphysically speaking, it's uncertain if that is something someone should cry over.
How did you get out? Who let you out?
What?
Not you.
Hannah glanced around and only realized the voice came over the intercom. She seemed to say something at the camera, but he didn't splurge for the kind with audio. She seemed to get that there wasn't any sound, so she made a face and gesture that roughly translated to, "Who, me?"
John, call backup.
There isn't any since Sherman.
Backup's on the way, Hannah.
He really hoped she didn't hear the security guard, but her visibly vindictive chuckle made him second-guess things. He opened a drawer in his desk and pulled out a massive revolver, hoping it wouldn't come to that. Again.
You need to go down there.
I still can't see.
Spencer watched Hannah stare at the section of the floor that had burnt remains stuck to it. She seemed to lean forward a bit, studying a bullet hole in the wall. With a scowl, she shook her head and walked to Lab 4, which was right across the hall from Lab 1.
She's in Sherman's old lab.
Dr. Edmund's lab now, I think, wait, what about Jason? What about Dr. Edmund?
He began loading in bullets and sighed. The odds of something getting out were thankfully low, but they weren't zero, and Hannah didn't know what not to touch.
Dr. Edmund is half of the deep end herself. If Hannah finds out what she's been working on...
I'll call Martens. Go fix this.
Sean motioned to his eyes like there was a major hiccup in the plan.
Fine. Put more creamer on there.
Can I have the gun this time?
No.
The stench of it caught her off guard before she pushed her way into Lab 4. A dull mirror to the one she'd just gotten out of, the differences were maybe too stark not to notice off the bat. Mainly the cages. Each was empty, except for one with a goddamn chimp in it, of all things. The unfortunate creature rocked back and forth in a far too small cage. Top of its head was lined with discolored gauze. It didn't seem to notice her, which didn't make Hannah feel an iota better. The rest of the lab seemed straightforward despite how cobbled together the whole operation was. There were 2 distinct workstations, 2 chairs, 2 garbage cans, 2 laptop chargers, but only 1 cell phone charger plugged into a wall. But then there was a partially broken up cabinet like someone smashed it when the place had originally been cleared out. A first aid kit sat on a table with a box of bullets right next to it, which wasn't exactly standard in any lab she'd ever worked in. That didn't catch her nearly off guard as the sound of whimpering across the lab from the chimp. She went to see what it was, only for her heart to sink.
Poor baby.
The dog had a missing eye, shaved fur over portions of his coat, and sutures running along those. Aside from that, it was a sleek black and brown puppy with floppy ears. She placed them at a month old, give or take. The puppy stared up at Hannah like she'd dig into his cuts.
I won't hurt you.
The dog didn't seem to believe her. She opened a container looking for food to see piles of something red and white. It stunk to high hell either way, but she suspected that she knew what it was, especially when she saw dark patches of fur in some parts. Kicking the container away from her, she tried to catch her breath. She put her hand on another large Tupperware box in search of dog food, only to hear a rattling of a cage. Very slowly, she turned back to the chimp. Unmistakably, the animal stared at her with eerie intelligence. Once he realized that he had her undivided attention, the chimp shook its head. She motioned to the box that she was about to open, and the chimp nodded once. She stood and took a step back.
Dog food?
The chimp actually had the audacity and the mental capacity to sigh flippantly. They motioned to a drawer by the bullets and first aid kits. She opened it to see, yup, there was cheap-ass dog food that the pet store she used to work at wouldn't even sell. She dug out a handful and opened the cage. The poor puppy lurched back, but she simply lowered her hand to let it know she had food.
Thanks.
She peeked back to the chimp, who motioned to a latch on his cage. Once she realized what he was getting at, she winced. The chimp, who was in terrible shape, glared at her like a coffee he ordered got served cold. The line of gauze around his head felt a little ominous. She guessed pretty quickly that this thing had something done to its brain.
This isn't getting much weirder.
Hannah glanced around, realizing she didn't recognize some of the devices on the lab counters. Printouts of chromosomes and DNA were on clipboards. Some portions were circled in red. Autoclaves, incubators, stuff like that were straightforward enough. She couldn't tell what a long, white and blue, syringe-like object was. It seemed a bit too cartoonish, like a kid's toy posing as a medical device. At another station, a ridiculous amount of chemicals sat around a centrifuge. She guessed one person did genetic research there, while another seemed to do biochemistry, given she'd only seen 2 doctors there so far, who did what hardly seemed to matter in the grand scheme of things. But looking closer, something felt off. She only sort of vaguely knew a quarter of the symbols. In her undergrad, a chemistry professor went ham on the last day of class explaining the history of chemistry, and Hannah could only think that a few of them would make for some pretty sick tattoos. She never did get any tattoos. 5 piercings, but not a one. Plenty of stuff she expected from the lab with a medical tilt to it. Beakers with frosted portions with serpents and eyes wasn't one of them. A 2-headed mishmash person was posted on a wall. Now that gave her some pause. Then there was a circle of geometric runes painted onto the floor, and at that point she just gave up trying to figure out what it was. She tilted towards the workstation and squinted. A small whiteboard had a series of chemical compounds drawn on it. The symbols really strained her eyes, and that's when she took in the word alkahest. She had no idea what that was, so she figured it was an odd orphan drug they were working on. Snapping her out of her focus was another rattle of the cage.
Well, I understand you would like to be free, but he's eating.
Hannah watched the little dog eat out of her hand. Her heart jerked in every direction, wondering how she'd get the little Doberman puppy out, and a captive in an unknown condition. She didn't think letting a chimpanzee out would help the situation all that much.
The security guard, I think his name was Jason, the other captive, and Rachel, don't hurt them, and I will.
The chimp ripped the gauze off to show their forehead and scalp had been crudely stitched up. It made a motion with its hands like it was strangling someone, then pantomime biting into the skull viciously.
Yeah, okay, but doing that won't get you freedom. It'll get you shot by animal control. Think long term.
The chimp slammed the cage again and pointed to his scalp. Hannah shrugged at the point. The chimp showed off its teeth when it had an ounce of pushback.
Do you want to be free or not?
Picking up what she was putting down, the chimp nodded.
All right. Those are my conditions.
She took a step away from the dog, only for it to whimper. She held her chest for a second before getting to the monkey.
Don't make me regret this.
The monkey seemed indignant as she clicked open the door, and then she got Will the fuck away from the cage. The chimp lowered itself down, went to a drawer, and dug out a small plastic container. By the time it stuck something into its lips, Hannah realized it was a nicotine pouch. It went to another drawer and pulled out what seemed like a peach-flavored energy drink. The chimpanzee bit into the can, loudly guzzling the fizzy drink. She could reason that the monkey had some invasive, unethical, and preposterous brain surgery that made it smarter. Sure. But then it immediately became addicted to nicotine and caffeine. The little fucker was on a quickly running out clock by the look of things. That probably wasn't worth inspecting. Instead, she scooped up the little dog and bolted out of the lab.
God damn it, Hannah. Why the hell did you let that thing loose?
The monkey came into the hall, threw the can over his shoulder, burped loudly, and entered Lab 1. Since they were expected to see some horrific carnage, instead the chimp came out a moment later, vaping and trying on the shades the security guys were fond of.
For fuck's sake. You don't know how dangerous some of this stuff is. Can you please stop?
Hannah flipped him off. She finally recalled the film 28 days later when she was digging through Lab 3, which actually felt like it was in the right spot. She was fairly certain that the zombie outbreak was caused by a monkey getting loose from a lab. She couldn't recall most of that movie, mostly since she was a kid when she saw it. It was a dumb thing to recall out of the blue, sure, but the place she was in was even dumber. This wasn't even strictly another lab. It felt more like tacky, rapidly converted office space. It stood to reason for her anyways that if they were doing illegal and unethical experiments there, they'd want to have as few things tied to themselves as possible, and then by proxy whoever they were answering to. And yet there were little effects that made it more welcoming. There were 2 potted plants for one thing, a green herb and another one with reddish leaves. Then there was a medieval art wall calendar with some days marked off until the end of the goddamn year of 2024. Someone left their breakfast out, which included 1 intact hard-boiled egg. A portrait of a salty old codger hung on the wall. His mismatched eyes, one green and the other blue, glared out, making it feel like they followed her around the room. And someone left out an old typewriter, which they probably dug up in the shoddy, half-abandoned section of the hospital they'd taken over. Petting the dog, she dug through the thankfully unlocked computer. Thanks, Rachel. Most of it was sheer nonsense, and none of it was organized to any degree beyond a few folders. One of the folders just for patients pissed her off when she saw her name on a document.
Cheap bastards.
She opened a PDF file, printed out medical records. Looks like someone took a picture of them with a phone. Going to the hospital after dealing with clot, the time spent with the slime debacle, the time she went for a minor surgery on her wrist. God damn it, all of it was there. Then there were the files regarding her new skin grafts. Mostly that her skin was an experimental blend, basically half-grown in a lab. That was news to her. Then she saw her old company had some proprietary thing going on with the skin grafts, so that was neat. Given all that, she expected some superfluous but equally invasive information. The exact time she had breakfast the previous Tuesday, all the dates she missed the gym, the one very deserved Yelp review she gave. But no, it all kind of ended there with the exception of a note about her doctorate program.
Great.
Go figure, they bribed the shit out of her program director. So her old company wanted her gone, and figured vivisecting her would do the trick. That made enough sense to her.
Shh, it's okay.
The dog recoiled from the sound of the printer. causing her to scoop up the puppy and cradle it to her chest.
Who else is here?
She found the next file, and once more it was a shoddily scanned or poorly uploaded photos of documents. This was for a different person entirely.
What the hell?
The dog perked up, and she looked down at him with a shake of her head. She had to know who labeled all the files. One just read, Harpernova Half Moon. Alien? Another said, werewolf issues? With 3 exclamation points. And yet a third said, Bloody Stockton. Warning, in all caps. Rolling her eyes, she opened one at random. The first thing she saw was a screenshot of an Instagram post of a cute, lively, and otherworldly-seeming woman with a coffee shop. There was a sign hanging behind her that said, Vaccines don't cause autism. Hannah liked this woman immediately. But it became clear that these dipshits thought this Harper woman was part alien, or something. But at least they didn't have her yet. Odd, sure, but Hannah got the annoying sensation that it might come up on a later date. She opened the next file with a held breath. Floyd Mertens, the captive, had a clean bill of health except for some high cholesterol. There were more concerns with his movements day to day and his involvement with some strange figures that posed some threat. She saw the names Simon Richards and Sasha Reuven, both of whom she met during the slime incident. Apparently, whatever support group they were in, they had an invested interest in keeping Florian safe. Another person of interest in Florian's life, one Emery Mirza, had a note on it saying that they weren't going to kidnap him, but it was a name she recognized.
Small world. I went to undergrad with him. We had an English elective together.
The dog didn't seem to understand, but admired her enthusiasm and excitement for the most part.
Right.
She kept scrolling through typed-up notes or crudely pasted pictures of documents. Her stomach lurched as there was the fact that Florian was in Lab 2 with several biopsies done. The note said that they were regimenting his pain meds to keep him captive, chemical restraint in the most cruel meaning of the word. She printed out all the notes and cradled the dog.
They need his DNA and his organs for his dad? His dad's behind this?
So he was loaded Rhode Island aristocracy. The estranged son of a deranged rich bastard with an interest in science, medicine, and the occult. Hannah peeked up at the painting again, of presumably Percival Martens, and figured he did kind of look like a bastard. She scrolled to see a photo of Florian himself, and found a rather handsome, well-aged man in his mid-50s. She wouldn't use the word pompous to describe his strong jaw, goatee, or well-combed hair, but a lingering aesthetic grace clung to him. Then she noticed his eyes, one blue and the other green. She very slowly turned back to the portrait and saw some uncanny resemblance. The remaining photo was of Florian and a remarkably stunning Latina woman in her 50s. The two were at what looked like a cookout, both in colorful and sort of tacky outfits, their arms around one another, unbidden happiness permeating their expressions. She mentally prepared herself to find this man a corpse or something close to one. Hannah stopped digging through the files, hit print, and collected the papers. Putting them into a folder, she decided to dig a bit further. She changed tactics and dug through a different set of folders. Once more she hit pay dirt, and thanked what remained of her luck that they had everything on a closed system. There were dozens of PDFs about organ transplants. Then, of enormous frustration, they had all the findings she had made when she was a pharmaceutical lab tech. All the notes about antibiotics for lung infections. All of them. It made sense when she put it all together. Lungs were one of the safer organs to transfer, only because they didn't produce much by way of hormones. But like any transplant recipient, they were usually on immunosuppressants for a long time, and they had to be careful with what antibiotics they took. A picture was forming, but she couldn't piece it all together. But then she dug into what they were working on and found notes on a clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats procedure. CRISPR, the gene editing process, always seemed a bit silly to her. The wrong people got excited about it for the wrong reasons. The conversation quickly turned to eugenics. Though, for what it was worth, the dipshits running this lab made a note that editing genes could reduce rejection risk for transplants. They had to have foresight eventually. She rubbed the dog as she saw the results of what happened to a guy named Sherman, who notably didn't have a doctor before his name. Another dog, and the entirety of the little one's litter, met a far worse fate. She had covered the dog's eyes, unsure if it would recognize what became of its mother.
Oh, damn.
The embedded clip of Sherman's experiments showed the dog bending, breaking, and mutating. Bone-like protrusions burst from its head. Its jaw expanded and formed more teeth, and its muscles seized as they grew. Breaking loose, the creature jumped towards the person holding the camera. The blank sickness and the stillness that followed felt like heartburn to Hannah. Picking down to the dog on her arm, she rubbed it under his chin. The following notes stated that Sherman himself got maimed horribly. Another security guard, this one going by Tim Thompson, which felt like a fake name, got ripped apart, and a note said that he was very dead. The dog, if that's what it still was, had been shot, burned, and quickly disposed of. She was very glad she didn't open that one box in the other lab. For a second, she wondered if the security guard who got mauled also had slick back blonde hair and stupid sunglasses. During an emergency surgery, they stated that Sherman's organs and bones showed signs of mutations, even some benign but truly bizarre polyps. and that the man had very likely done CRISPR experiments on himself, but the information ended there on him. So things there had taken some truly horrible turns. No wonder backup wasn't coming or the security guards were so sheepish to go down there alone. It also cleared up one thing. Sherman did genetics, Rachel did biochemistry, and Spencer worked on immunosuppressants. Cool. None of them seemed to be on the same page. But coagulating? Great work? Alkahest? Whatever. She dug into a folder and immediately felt lost. Her eyes glazed over at a string of meaningless words. Generate the way to perfectly clone a human being, keeping intact a rare birth defect that makes him possessible by a powerful spirit, while being able to dissolve and coagulate, and having a larger penis and hair that won't thin. Hannah craned her neck trying to figure out what the hell that could mean. The next paragraphs didn't change that much. The answer, which was a hot mess, called for experiments on animals, injecting human brain pieces into a chimpanzee skull with the help of some weird chemical compound. Something about dogs being perfectly suitable test subjects, and a note about thinning hair. The next few requests were slightly less opaque and a little more focused.
No.
Yes, her hunch was right. One, or all of them, were using generative AI to guide along their research. The dense decision boggled her mind. It already led to untold fucking misery amongst just a handful of test runs. And by what she could tell, at least herself, Florian, and this Harper lady, possibly some others, needed to wash their asses. On top of that, clean water had been eaten up for this brain-rotted bullshit. All that, and she still wasn't clear on what dissolving and coagulating had to do with any of it. Though when blood coagulated, it clotted, which she didn't like to think about. If she opened a lab to see clot in a test tube or something similar, she would have to think hard about what she did. Maybe it would be nice to catch up. Maybe he was a victim too. Maybe Clot was behind all this, and just controlling everybody. Maybe they can finally bond and talk about how much they hate Stompclap. Checking the desk drawer, she found a pack of cigarettes and a lighter. It blew her mind that people in the medical field smoked. She looked at the lighter and considered how many oxygen tanks were in the building, and put it back and tried not to think too hard about it. What she wouldn't do to have a phone down there with her. No, she just had their weird-ass closed system.
All right, let's find Lab 2.
She scooped out the puppy and nestled her head against the fur for a moment. She stepped out with the folder under her arm. Across the hall were 2 bathrooms, and further into the building was Lab 2, which felt too far back. Then there was an operating theater. She couldn't get hung up on the details for the time being. She peeked behind her to the end of the hall where she saw a monkey eating a protein bar and scratching his ass.
What the hell?
The thing looked awful. Like moving around that much was medically inadvisable. The chimp, who had parts of their brain edited, and with huge air quotes, cloned, had been tortured horribly. For all she knew, he'd die in a day of virulent meningitis from the shoddy surgery, or have an aneurysm drop, or she let loose a monkey who would freeze to death in the too warm but still pretty chilly December.
Hey.
The monkey petulantly ignored her.
What do you mean? She's here. We got her.
The doctor broke into a sweat when someone from the company answered the phone. Technically, Spencer was on leave for independent and unrelated research. The fact that it was independent for a major shareholder in the company wasn't likely to be of any consequence. So far, things weren't looking up. Backup, strictly speaking, wasn't coming, but someone was on the way to figure things out, which meant he had very little time to figure this out and get everything sorted.
NDA? She can't even testify. No, but she's getting her doctorate? Okay. Well, what about revenge?
Dr. Wu let out the sort of sigh that tried to disguise itself as something else. He turned to Sean. The security guard kept rubbing his eyes, but seemed like he could see again.
A sunk cost, right. Well, she still has the skin grafts. We can test on her or just make her disappear. Things are under control over here. We still have Percival's son. As soon as we get the last biopsy, we can turn him over. Yes, Florian. I see. Thank you so much.
He hung up the phone like he'd throw it across the room. He checked the monitor to see Hannah getting into the room that held the key for all of this not to be a monumental failure.
Hannah, do not go in there.
She didn't seem keen to listen.
Get her now.
The security guard stood, eyeing the gun next to Dr. Wu. If he'd followed his gut, he'd have brought his own reasonably sized handgun from home and kept it under wraps till needed. A responsible gun owner, if nothing else. He figured having a gun around increases the chances of someone else getting shot by a measurable amount, much less a comically impractical magnum. But not every workplace had dog mutants, monkeys trying to cut deals with him, strange men with ancient curses, and whatever the hell Dr. Edmund was on about. Then there was Hannah, who he couldn't help but think was a hair more dangerous than anyone was realizing. It felt like another monster was loose in the basement. It felt like he was in Jurassic Park and she was a raptor.
What do you want done with her anyway?
Rapture her.
Sure thing. Can I please have the gun?
No.
And Travis?
They both turned to the camera feed like the monkey would be there flipping them off. No, it was somehow worse. The chimp ran out of Lab 1 with an irate Dr. Edmund following it with a busted IV pole. She whacked the creature across the shoulders and slammed it down once more. Heaving, she turned around the hall to see if anyone was going to give her shit for any of that. For his money, Sean totally saw her snapping much sooner. Not like he thought anyone there was playing with a full deck besides himself and his brother.
Now.
The gun.
Now.
Hannah didn't get why the place was so goddamn big and empty. No, seriously, for how much hallway there was, the amount of lab space seemed oddly limited. Sure, the whole thing was simply a straight line, and not even the full hallway, but the dim light made it seem a little too cramped. There were only a couple 100 feet from the elevator to the end of the hall that ended abruptly in tarps and wood. All the same, it felt needlessly expansive while being cramped.
Hannah, don't go in there.
Hannah flipped off the nearest security camera. She opened the door to the operating theater and immediately wanted to turn around. She knew the smell of faintly rotting meat that can only come from a dead body, the putridity of it all. And there, poking out of a body bag, was what used to be a person. Whatever bits they were done looking through were dumped into a biohazard bag next to the table. An aspirator pump still sat unceremoniously in the person's chest cavity. She got closer, not taking the dog's heed that this was an awful idea. She got close enough to see the face, fearing that she'd catch a glimpse of Florian. She couldn't quite tell what she was staring at. A portion of their forehead had been sawn away, revealing an open and empty cranium. Their face, one she didn't recognize, seemed blissfully blank. A knee-jerk reaction jumped into her brain, but she dismissed it almost as quickly. So that was likely the security guy. Getting out of the operating room and into the hall, she took a second to fight a wave of nausea that took its time coming and going. She got before Lab 2 and tried to think of what her next step would be. Running past the curtain with Florian and looking for a back way out seemed like a solid enough plan. Hiding out in the hospital and waiting for help to come seemed like a perfectly reasonable plan, all things considered. But the fact remained, she had no clue what shape Florian was in. At the very least, if she got to the lobby, she figured she'd be safe. Hannah opened the door and found a man lying in bed, absolutely coated in sweat. Relief didn't come yet, which sucked because she really needed some of that dopamine.
What now?
That wasn't good. The stately man she saw in the picture was nowhere to be found. His hair matted to his sweat-soaked skin, and his mismatched eyes weakly gazed right at her. The guy looked bad, and smelt worse. The fact that his moist sheets were pulled up to his chin didn't help much.
We gotta get the hell out of here.
She stepped in, looking around, only to see two cartoonish cylindrical tanks, each large enough to fit a 32-year-old author with sleep issues into them. The first had been broken, with a portion of glass punched outward. That probably should have been more concerning, given that the other one had a body in it. She saw a mostly formed man floating with ribs exposed and missing sections to their abdomen. Chunks of muscle and bone were taken out of their arms and legs. She couldn't tell if that was Sherman, but it definitely seemed like a mutant dog got to them.
Fuck me. God damn it.
Are you another one of Percival's lick-spittle shit for brains?
She widened her eyes with a momentary indignation before laughing. The guy was going down fighting. He also seemed far more acclimated to the strange situation than her.
I'm not. No, I'm a PhD student.
Don't hurt that dog.
She backed away and searched around for anything. She got to a clipboard at the base of his bed and quickly read through it. The biopsy they were going to take was going to come right out of his skull, so that was pretty disturbing. Then they were only giving him enough morphine to keep him from going into shock and to keep the swelling down, but not enough to actually dull the pain.
Where did they take the samples from?
What more do you people want?
They were going to drill into your skull. I am here to let you free and get you out. My name's Hannah. Can you walk?
The word sank in for him little by little. He shook his head and pulled off the sheets to show a poorly dressed wound with crusting blood around his leg.
I can't walk. They used a drill.
An intraosseous drill. That's so fucked up.
What? Yeah, it was.
Hannah turned to a cabinet filled with drugs and another drawer filled with what she needed in it. Going to a small cooler, she found 3 bags of blood in it. None were labeled, which meant she could give this guy a lethal blood clot if she used any of them. She settled on drugs and saline.
Do you have any drug allergies?
Sulfa.
A common enough allergy, and luckily, they didn't have any in their surprisingly stocked drug cabinet. There were some she couldn't recognize. Go figure they needed to make some strange orphan drugs, or produce them, for something like this, which made the alka-hest she saw in Lab 4 make a bit more sense.
How much do you weigh?
180, I think.
And I got a syringe ready with something that would numb the pain, then another with something that keep him mostly awake, and finally a third of saline. She saw a full bottle of fentanyl. That was the only drug not from her old company. They were avoiding a certain level of scrutiny. The trick he gets.
You need to trust me. I want to help.
Who sent you?
My program manager. Long story. I'm captive here too, but the 3 of us are getting out, okay?
Florian said nothing, looked to the dog as if he'd pipe up and say everything was going to be okay, and jerked his head slightly to the side like he accepted his fate. She tied up his surprisingly muscular arm with a rubber tourniquet and patted the side of his elbow a few times. She didn't have to dig for worms since his veins were pretty defined. The first shot made him wince slightly before he sighed and rested his head back.
Is that a painkiller?
Morphine. Sorry about that. Given your injuries, acetaminophen would be better, but the concentration is different and I don't want to set up a line.
Morphine? Shit. Should we be listening to the Gun Club or the Velvet Underground?
She didn't know either of those bands well enough to make a joke. Instead, she got the second shot ready.
This'll keep you from passing out.
Oh, wow.
Florian exhaled heavily, his tendons and muscles tensing like the sensations were far too foreign for him to put into words.
Do you know what you're doing?
What happened to trust? Yeah, I'm a PhD student.
Cool. Yeah, I went to college. I'm a painter.
Yeah? I thought about doing modeling work, but I'd need to make a stipulation that any artist that paints me makes my ass look great.
Like he actually couldn't help it, his eyes went down to her hips. She refused to take that personally one way or the other. She undid the band, and he ground his jaw shut for a few seconds. The pupils of his mismatched, watery eyes narrowed slightly.
What's the plan?
Well, if we go up the way I came, it seems like a bad call, so I say we find if another stairwell works, pry it open if the doors are locked, and...
He motioned to his leg. Like it was a fight she refused to back down on. She hit a lever on the lower part of the hospital bed and moved it back and forth before clicking the brakes on again.
If it comes to it, I can carry you. I go to the gym every day. It's gotta be worth something, right?
The plan seemed to be sinking in very slowly for him. The sigh he gave spoke volumes to her, like he realized he was being a burden, and hated that fact from the bottom of his being.
Yeah, okay. Look behind the broken tank.
She didn't want to get close to either one, but trust had to go both ways. Heading that way, she saw that both tanks were controlled by an equally silly-looking console attached to a wide bundle of wires. The sensation of being watched tickled her, like she turned to see the body in the tank smiling at her. Aside from that, sure enough, there was an old but functional wheelchair folded up behind the corner.
Do you know what the deal was with this alchemy shit they're doing?
She opened the wheelchair and tested how it moved. So far, so good.
Alchemy? They were doing alchemy?
Solving Caligula or something?
Solve et coagula. To dissolve and coagulate. It's to either make a substance's platonic ideal or a person.
Who couldn't use more friends?
Plato. Ah, nice one.
He didn't believe that. So much for trust.
I can't tell if they were trying to clone people or what. They were using gene editing to make transplants safer, but then, I don't know, really.
You get it. But, Hannah, assume these people are 2% denser than you think.
Nobody was on the same page, I know that much. So not even their goals aligned? Oh.
Yeah, it's par for the course.
She smiled curiously at him, wondering how often he dealt with people like this. Either occult-obsessed weirdos or quacks. She already guessed his life was a bizarre affair, especially given he somehow knew the people from the support group in Oakston, and a former classmate of hers. But it was a distant and off-kilter mystery. Though, for those curious, you could just read The New England Book of the Dead, and its sequel, The Frequency Delusion, Tales from the New England Book of the Dead. Both out now.
But they wound up with a way to dissolve people? Was that the great work?
Wow, okay. This feels weird.
The drugs will do that. Oh, they were using something called alkahest.
It's a metaphor. Alkahest, the universal solvent, was an actual chemical goal for alchemists. For the corpus, the body, mind, and spirit, that was a metaphor. To be broken down into component parts, or the prima materia, and reforming oneself better, more, I don't know. Am I supposed to feel like this?
She felt his clammy skin for a pulse. While slowing down, it didn't seem dangerously low. She watched his chest rise and fall steadily. So far, so good. He wasn't liable to drop suddenly, have his breathing be too depressed, or have a seizure.
So did a bunch of alchemists melt themselves in acid thinking they could reform themselves if they tried hard enough?
I heard about an acidic slime from a friend of mine. Someone died from that.
She felt her throat tighten.
Oakston. Yeah, one did, probably. It's a metaphor. At once we are all of us, one, while being beautiful individuals. Those are both intrinsically and paradoxically true. The idea is to know yourself well enough, all parts, the shadowy stuff we don't think about, the weird habits, stuff like that.
What could hold a solvent that could dissolve anything?
Exactly. It's all a metaphor, or a thought experiment.
She thought the darkest, nastiest parts of herself were shoved in her face enough to know herself that well. She certainly knew her limits. She knew herself physically, mentally, and probably spiritually. She pictured herself, trying to feel her whole body at once. The pain from getting hit by the doctor upstairs, the ache in her wrist from the zip ties, the rumble in her gut from being a little hungry, the itch on her ankle, all of it. It gave her the annoying, full-body dissociation that came from being too aware of oneself. The feeling like she was something else entirely, looking through a set of eyes and piloting a body.
I'll move you over in a second. I'm listening.
No delusions, no lies, no self-deception. Just one's being and truth.
She pulled the wheelchair over and hoisted him out of bed. 180 pounds her difficult to pain ass. She blessed her nervous habit of going to the gym daily for not being crushed by him. With a huff, she got him into the wheelchair and forced his hips back so he wouldn't fall out. She put the puppy on his lap and fit the papers behind him.
Ready?
Who's a good boy?
She accepted the fact that he'd be high as a hot air balloon for the entirety of the trip.
No. Are you kidding? Don't do this.
Hannah looked around for a camera to flick off, but there was no such luck. They were alone there. No cameras. Nothing except stomping footfalls.
Don't do it. Dr. Edmund? Rachel?
Hannah gripped the handle of the wheelchair, unsure if she should start running or find something heavy to deal with Dr. Rachel. The issue being that there was only one way out of the room.
Hold on.
Rachel burst in with a badly beaten monkey dragging behind her, and her white knuckles wrapped around a bent IV pole. She dropped the chimp and waved the pole at Hannah.
Stay right there. Stay right fucking there.
The deranged doctor stormed over to the computer by the tanks. Hannah eyed the door and wondered how far she could get without being noticed. She didn't even close them behind her. What, was her doctorate program in a barn or something?
Fuck, not her.
Seriously, Rachel.
Hannah eyed the beaten monkey like she wished she could feel a bit better. And yet, with all the stupid details they had at hand, with all the incriminating evidence, she didn't find out how they got a monkey, much less one addicted to nicotine and energy drinks. The little chimps started dragging themselves away, like they had more sense than her.
Using an AI for anything is fucking dumb. Using one for cloning is beyond stupid. You might want to listen to them.
It wasn't a clone. It's prima materia, the link between Platonism and modern science.
Rachel began punching in something on the console holding the body. She thought she could possibly get under the IV pole and beat this woman senseless before something bad happened.
AI is dumb.
It's the cybernetic model. Haven't you read Technosis?
Did you read Making Mice? It's a neat read. We went through it in a scientific ethics course. Basically, we use mice and rats in labs.
Rachel's eyes narrowed into pinpricks of impotent rage. Hannah didn't think any of this would get through, but she hadn't had a chance to pop off about that book in ages. Either way, it wasn't liable that they'd buy them much time.
Because they're considered vermin. So scientists have a lot of leeway.
You're vermin. You are vermin.
I think you missed the point. Have you ever taken an ethics class?
Rachel began punching buttons into a console like Hannah didn't ask a perfectly reasonable question.
This is about the great work.
Hannah eyed a heavy glass beaker on the counter just out of arm's reach.
Plato, Diogenes, Einstein, fucking Hermes Trismegistus. They didn't have an AI model to work with. All accumulated knowledge, it's the Philosopher's Stone.
From the corner of her eye, Hannah saw Florian's mop of white hair tilt as if he was trying to peek up at her. She knew what it was, the silent question of, is this psycho for real?
That's stupid.
Hannah patted his shoulder, unable to agree more. After punching a series of buttons, Rachel took a step away. A torrent of strange fluid came out of the tank. The stench wasn't dissimilar to the slime she dealt with months earlier. Putrid, perhaps a little too sweet, and nauseating nonetheless. Hannah expected something a hair more dramatic. Instead, the clone popped out and fell onto the ground. It could have been less anticlimactic if it farted as it landed.
Okay, really impressive. You got us.
Hannah took a step back as a very high Florian covered the dog's eyes. She took a step back and scooped at the beaker as Rachel glared at the body. The doctor knelt, pulling a needle from her lab coat.
Stop. What's that?
Hannah brandished the beaker like she had an ideal shot at the doctor's head.
Alkahest.
If that's the universal solvent, whatever. If that's the universal solvent, why isn't it dissolving the needle it's in?
That's not how it works.
Step away from the body.
Fuck yourself.
Before Hannah could react, the doctor plunged a needle into the corpse's chest. About a second later, a beaker hit Rachel on the shoulder and knocked her back.
You bitch!
What are you doing injecting shit into corpses?
Rachel managed to stand and grab the IV pole.
He's still alive, and you're...
Before Rachel could finish that, she got dragged to the ground. Hannah almost wanted to laugh before the woman let out a scream.
Shit.
She turned over the desk with the computers on it to see Rachel having her leg gripped by the desiccated corpse. First, Hannah didn't think much of it until she noticed a hand with the woman's ankle in it. Little by little, cell by cell, the massive human components softened and meshed into the woman's skin. Hannah knelt and gripped Rachel. The iron grip of the corpse's body seemed unreasonable. Rachel lurched in pain as something in her shifted.
Fuck! God damn it! Help me, you bitch!
The fuck were you thinking?
What's happening? Fuck!
Hannah's grip loosened as Rachel stopped thrashing. The woman seemed to bend back a bit. Hannah watched as the thing pulled Rachel into itself. The two bodies joined, coming apart as they did. forming a mass of undefined flesh, shifting like crepitus, cracking apart, and snapping into a less defined shape, organs losing their structure, skin peeling back like blinds on a window, veins unraveling and splitting apart, letting blood fill the air with the scent of iron. Hannah stepped back, nearly wanting to puke, as she saw the mass form into a shapeless, writhing pulse of prima materia. Hannah nearly tripped over the wheelchair. If she'd eaten a proper breakfast, she'd have hurled it up. The mass, as if knowing what was around it, formed a skinless hand with far too many fingers and dragged itself forward. The edges of the mass shifted like peristalsis. And worse, it could move way quicker than Hannah would have guessed, though only about as much as a steady gait.
Sove coagula.
Hannah didn't care and gripped the wheelchair. Running, she closed the door only to see the mass pushing against it and pooling on the ground beneath it.
Just take the dog and go.
No, we're leaving.
She opened a tarp at the end of the hall to see a wall being built. There wasn't even a door in place for her to get through. Feeling like it was a bit from an old cartoon, she backed off with a torrent of swears. She pushed Florian once more.
What kind of dog is this?
Doberman, I think.
She pushed him through the main corridor to see the mush slowly coming out of the door. What she wouldn't do for a gross monster to stay in its lane and not cause any more problems.
I'm sorry.
Oh, Christ. What the fuck is this? Hannah, what did you do?
Hannah took that extremely personally. They got within 10 feet of the elevators only for the previously blinded security guard and his twin brother, possible clone, to meet him outside of Lab 1.
We need to run.
The two pounced, and Hannah didn't have a chance to duck out of the way. With a clatter, Florian fell onto the ground, still clutching a dog, as Hannah hit her head on the floor. The one without sunglasses and a large bruise on his head gripped the collar and hoisted her up.
No, Jason, wait.
You can't be serious right now.
Aren't we? Are you serious? Look at what you did.
Do you not see that?
Holy fuck. Forget them. We need to go.
Help me.
The two security mooks looked at Florian, which wasn't her intended target, but she took the opportunity for what it was. She gripped Jason by the cheek and bodily turned his head to see the mass steadily encroaching towards them. Doing a double take, Jason got to his full height, tripped over Hannah, and hit his head on the wall with more force than seemed healthy.
Come on, do something.
The monkey instead hit the up button on the elevator and waited impatiently for the doors to open. That had to be good enough. Hannah kicked back and gripped a sweat-soaked Florian.
Oh, God. It has me.
Hannah didn't look, opting instead to drag Florian to the elevator. The damn thing was slow enough for her to try and run back and save someone.
No.
Pull him in when it opens.
She knew damn well that the chip understood English, but the little animal seemed a bit too shocked. The little chimp nodded rapidly to avoid her ire. Leading to the security guys, she saw Sean consumed up to his knees. She lost track of which was which, but that hardly mattered. She helped his brother, or possible clone, grab him and pull. She saw fleshing hands wrapping around him and pulling him into the mass.
Jason, help me. I feel...
The security guard's skin sloughed off as his skeleton lost a defined shape. His terrified eyes met her as the prima materia engulfed his entire body. As the other security guard shouted and started crying, Hannah pulled him away instead.
Help me get him out.
No. I'm sorry, but we're leaving.
It has me. It has me.
Hannah quickly shot a glance over to the chimp, shoddily pulling Florian and the dog into the elevator. So that was handled. She looped both arms around the trapped security guard's chest and yanked as hard as she could. Over his shoulder, she saw what seemed like intestines and tendons gripping into the man's skin, burrowing like hungering maggots. And to his credit, the security guard pulled as hard as he could. Even if they got out, this thing could feasibly find a way upstairs. They don't have free range to absorb anyone there. And some of the people, mainly the patients, couldn't run. It'd be like fish in a goddamn barrel.
Pull, damn it.
She watched the parts of his arm go slack, his bones losing all rigidity. She pulled him along as his forearm extended like clay. She put more work into it, nearly tossing the man over her shoulder. As she got him loose, she saw his arm break off after stretching for some inches. There wasn't any blood, which seemed concerning, but it also felt like it saved them some trouble. The remaining security guard staggered back and fell against the floor of the elevator. She went to follow, but found herself unable to move.
Fuck, help!
The security guard looked at her, eyed the mass, and kicked himself all the way into the elevator. Florian grabbed the man, but she watched him get elbowed.
Help her.
Help!
The door began to close as Hannah's leg muscles went slack. For a second, from her knees down, she couldn't feel anything. Then, far too rapidly, she felt the entirety of the mass, each nerve ending in a gestalt consciousness firing in sheer abject pain. She felt the mass forming into the skin and muscles of her legs. The bones in her foot pulled apart, her tendons being yanked taut, her tibia and fibula splitting down the middle and being shifted apart within the mass. It spread up her, feeling like a Charlie horse on the back of her thighs.
Please, someone!
She saw Florian struggling to stand as the elevator closed all the way, any hope of being saved disappear in moments. The pain spread up her back as her heart fully sank. She couldn't even feel relieved that they got away. By that point, her vertebrae dissected one by one. The sensation of her ribs drifting apart pulled the last of the air from her lungs. Intestines, kidneys, all of her insides drifting.
No, please, Hashem, no!
Suddenly, death became the least of her worries. Pulling herself as best she could, she felt nails break against the tile floor. A moment later, her abdomen felt ungodly pain. The sensation of her body, as an entirely separate entity, began to shift and warp. It felt like bones in her shoulders broke one by one. The sensation of her nervous system being co-opted made her arms cramp with fitful chills. Like any of that wasn't enough, the skin around her skull began to tug against the bone before she felt it go slack. More frightful agony sank in as her arms decided to stop working, falling the rest of the way onto the cold ground. She felt an eye loosening in her socket. Her jaw failed to move on its own, but she knew her teeth shifted away from the mandible. Her skull softened against the floor, pulling away into the mass. She expected the pain to stop as the last of her body dissolved. Dr. Wu stared in abject terror at the monitor. There was no way he'd get funding after that. The most he could do was drag Florian out, hold the fucker ransom, and hope the guy's obscenely wealthy dad was willing to pay up. The whole operation was under the table and off the books, so he could feasibly find a quiet spot to set up a practice and go back to selling Oxy under the table to his patients. He pulled out the gun and went to the elevator. As he heard it coming up, he aimed the handgun and waited. He swore he heard his heart thudding in his ears. The door opened, and the chimp rushed out with its teeth bared.
You have got to be kidding me. Help me. Motherfucker. What was that? That thing could have killed me.
The security guy stared at the floor, not reacting as much as someone should have when an entire clip got emptied into a chimpanzee. Spencer went over and gripped a man's deformed limb. It wasn't bleeding, instead ending on folded and stretched out skin.
What the fuck happened? Jason.
The security guard shuddered in place.
I think his name is Sean.
Shut the fuck up. Hey, what's going on?
I just let her die.
We were going to kill her anyway. Just stop. We can salvage this.
And she called for help, and I didn't do anything. I just let her die.
She went out of her way to save you.
Shut the fuck up. Hey, Jason, listen.
Still, the man failed to stare at anything other than the floor of the elevator. Even then, he probably wasn't really seeing much.
Sean, you don't have to listen to him. What does he have over you now?
The remaining security guard glanced at Florian, then at Spencer. The doctor thought he recognized the look. Just as they went to move, Spencer brought down the butt of the gun on the man's head and slammed him in the forehead, just above the eye. With another whack, the man's nose snapped under his fist. Heaving, Spencer watched him drop onto the floor, blood gushing from his nose. With a stomp, the guy wasn't getting up anytime soon.
I will beat that dog to death if you put up a fight. Do you hear me?
Florian wrapped the freaked-out dog tighter around his chest, guarding it from the freaky doctor. Dropping the gun on the floor of the elevator, the doctor dragged Florian by the collar, finding it was far harder than expected. In his defense, the guy had a pretty full day so far, and it wasn't even 10 in the morning.
We're getting out of here, and you're not going to raise a stink in the lobby. Do you hear me?
More eyes than her brain could process took in the state of the basement as it went searching for more flesh. The pain, all-consuming agony, changed intensity as they worked their way around the basement. More than once, but consciously few times, Hannah felt pieces of her hand reaching around the mass, slapping on the floor and pulling the prima materia forward. Everything felt like a fresh cut. No thoughts lasted very long, and her sense of the outside world felt co-opted. Even the loud bangs from upstairs felt as meaningless as the dull fluorescent lights. Knocking over a case in the room that held the animals, something that was once a few hands pulled apart a large plastic box. Distantly, Hannah recalled the chimp suggesting not to open that one, but some part of her mind told her that there was something in there to add to the mass. At least some of the eyes were facing a mostly charred body that the mass then pulled into itself. Going through it was one thing, but adding more organic material into itself felt less like eating and more like holding something by her armpit, except it eventually got disseminated, bringing an odd relief to the vicious agony. And that wasn't half of it. She saw herself sadly looking at a litter of puppies. Another perspective showed her experimenting on various dogs, until the large one mutated. A maddening third perspective, likely a result of the burns and putrefaction, showed her a sense memory of looking at the puppies as if they were her own. But the impulses didn't last more, as the last of the meat was added to the pile. Turning over more containers yielded bits of something, but she didn't know how to process them. More meat, more nerves and bones, more dogs it seemed. They slid and undulated back into the hall. She saw paw-like protrusions forming to push them along. Once they were done pulling, they'd shrink back into the mass. she felt her fingers on another person's palm, dragging them forward. She managed to get one of her fingers to twitch on its own, but it didn't matter. The sensation of her whole body being spread around the mass filled what nerves were left with an undue amount of pain. It got into the lab that a piece of the mass recalled. Hannah knew, and she wasn't sure how she did, that when she got there in the mornings, she'd set her glasses next to the keyboard. She knew one chair there squeaked, so she needed to take the stool instead. But none of those were her memories. But she couldn't remember what were her memories anymore anyways. She didn't think there was a her anymore, however distant it was. No more anxiety, no more guilt, no more wondering if she was making a huge mistake. It was all just them now, and she couldn't quite recall anything. The mass turned into the operating theater with a jerking rigidity. Some part of Hannah's mind recalled the human corpse in that room. The absolute repulsion sent sparks of self-awareness through what remained of her conscious mind. It was bad enough getting images and flashes of impulses from the people in the mass, and the ones added from the dogs. But another person? It was too much. It would be too much. Whatever was left of her would get bogged down and drowned in there until there was nothing left of her. And if this thing kept up, if it kept going, it would consume and incorporate helpless patient after helpless patient in the hospital, 1,000 voices screaming endlessly, until anything that resembled her mind evaporated, lost in a din of hollowing screams. The sensations didn't last, and she felt herself growing distant again. She stared up at the ceiling, feeling her mind sink beneath the agony.
No, Rite.
Her voice came from nowhere, but she felt herself going deaf all the same. And the room was just some guy, and they were already prodding at his discarded organs. One of her eyes faced towards the door out of the operating theater and back into one of the labs.
I am...
With a millisecond of lucidity, she reached for the door, feeling her hand move all around the mass of prima materia.
I don't like any of you enough for this.
Some part of herself felt rage at that, but she reached out all the same. Phantom sensations prowled around the floor, but she felt herself. A single part of herself. The tips of her fingers, the joints of her wrists. There was a split second before she felt as though her arm bent the wrong way. More agony blew through her system. Her whole body felt as warped and distant as it truly became. That was unmistakably her agony coursing through every nerve. The sensations telling her to stay in the mass fell away. Go figure, the doctors were only halfway to a flawed conclusion. Rachel only found a way to make a monster. And a bunch of corporate dipshits with dumb esoteric beliefs got something wrong. Stop the fucking presses. Halfway there, she had to figure out the rest. Her arm felt broken. Her knee split away from the tibia and fibula. Her heart beat away from its perch between her lungs. Her eyes took in opposite walls. She felt as much rage as fear in the maddening sensations.
I am.
Someone was going to come looking for her, and it simply wouldn't do if they found her like this. That wasn't even to mention what would happen if they got close to her. But it wasn't her. But there was a her. Reaching further, she felt the mass shift around her. The agony dampened to a few points as she reached. It struck her then, even without knowing the philosophies that went into alchemy, they hadn't coagulated anything. They just dissolved things into a puddle. Like it was personal that time. She reached out and felt the air above her. Her fingers wiggled, forcing herself to completely relieve the sensations of having a hand. As she tried to find the rest of her body, she felt some pressure on her hand. The finger snapped backwards, sending an uncertain agony back through the arm before she melted back into the mass.
Fuck.
The annoyingly invasive feeling of complete bodily awareness had been something she always avoided. It was like the opposite of dissociating, and she loved to dissociate and space out. She tried to recall it, to gnostically feel her entire self, envisioning her entire body, each sensation within. Reaching up and forward again, she felt air once more, and dropped her hand onto the tile floor. Even a millisecond of relief made her joints ache. Fighting the feeling, she pulled herself along, and felt her eyes open, staring at a blood-covered hand with a broken nail.
I'm getting...
Huge mistake. The momentary distraction snapped her arm back. Her entire body twisted and sank. The fear, the disgust, all of it pulled her into the same deranged focus that let her know that there was still a her in there in the first place. Not letting herself think for a millisecond, she pulled out her other arm and dragged herself along the floor. The sensation of her ribs sliding back into place nearly snapped her focus. Organs slithered back into place, the intricate knotwork of muscles along her spine snapping back together and holding tension. The organs of her abdomen writhed until they found their proper spot, feeling like the worst menstrual cramps she ever suffered through. Honestly, one of the most distracting parts was realizing that she was nude as she pulled herself out. The focus slipped for a millisecond, making her skin sloth away from herself. But luckily the pain motivated her. Gritting her teeth, which were thankfully hers and aligned again, she pulled until she felt her patella align with her femur.
Coagulate, coagulate.
With another yank, she felt her feet hit the cold floor. She wasn't even sure whose blood coated her from head to foot. For a second, she kept the full body awareness, distantly fearing that any lapse of focus would turn her back into a puddle. She turned over her shoulder. and watched the prima materia voraciously absorbing the corpse in the operating theater, blissfully unaware that she'd gotten out. And when the focus dropped, she found herself tired, hungry, nauseated, and covered in aches from when she got smacked around. But she didn't dissolve again. She couldn't quite put into words what was off. She equated it to putting her pants back on after a hookup, or when dried glue was peeled off skin. Something returned with some level of familiarity. But she had to contend with how truly odd normal was. She almost wanted to laugh, but an eye in the glob turned over to her, and she locked pupils with it. A spindly hand with a pad of a dog's paw on one finger extended to her.
Ugh, fuck off.
She kicked back and away from the hand that extended to a disgusting spindly arm with too many joints.
Rachel? Sean? Sherman? Hey, are any of you in there?
There were no answers. Hannah thought for a second about her plan, and if what she had in mind constituted murder.
Rachel, your shoes were ugly as fuck.
The mask drew in closer to her. She pulled herself away, but it brushed against her arm. When she didn't dissolve again, she looked at where it touched her and laughed. The gestalt organism tried to touch her again, but she kicked herself back that time. Getting to her feet, she staggered towards the elevator, until she realized the larger implication of what was going on, and that led her back to what she needed to do.
Damn it.
Running, sliding, and almost falling, she went to the lab that used to hold Florian. She dug out a blood bag from a cooler. She spiked the bag, filling it with enough fentanyl to kill somebody 12 times over. It went into the hall. Sure enough, the mass had slowly followed her, reaching forward, dragging itself along with skinless, disgusting hands.
Please, anyone. Just see yourself as whole. Come out.
Nothing.
Please.
Still, the silence deafened her. She dropped the bag before it, knowingly consigning the people in there to a merciful death, but killing them nonetheless. The gestalt dissolved mass took in the bag, and it began to make a truly disgusting sound as Hannah watched it writhe. Just as she suspected, it shuddered and went unnervingly still. With a painless sigh, she went from lab to lab, dragging out oxygen tanks. She piled them nearby on full blast. She pulled out all the bottles of alcohol and started dumping them onto the slowly shifting mass. Standing on a chair, she put some of the tarp from the end of the hall underneath the sprinklers, sliding them along the wall and securing it with medical tape. And to think, arson took so much work. She let a line of medical alcohol out to the elevator and hit the up button. In the time it took to come down, she went trudging to the office and dug out the lighter. She got back wrapped in a sheet with an IV pole and her shoes under her arm. The elevator finally opened, and she knelt with the lighter sparking to life.
I don't know if anyone's listening. I don't know who I'm even talking to. Should I? Fuck! Forgive me! Forgive them! Forgive yourselves!
The fire spread much faster than she thought it would. But go figure. The oxygen had been flooding the halls for almost 5 minutes. The flames hit the prima materia, and it lit with an off-putting, dim flame. So that was going to haunt her. She watched it burn for a few moments, the sprinkler system dying, not spitting out any water as it did so.
It's you. Is it you?
She tilted her head down at the security guard who looked badly beaten. Given all that happened, she decided not to take anything too personally, but fuck no was she dignifying him with a response. She hit the up button. I tried not to dry heave from the vile scent of cooked flesh. Filling his eyes on her, she tightened the sheet around herself.
No funny business.
The two had gone to the edge of the lobby, where Spencer had procured a wheelchair. Thankfully, for his purpose at least, nobody was heading into the front door. He began to push Florian into the large lobby.
This fucking lunatic kidnapped me.
What?
Already, the woman behind the counter, along with the actual hospital security guards, took in the two men, and the puppy like they had all been singing show tunes in unison. The doctor gave up trying to get him to move on his own, and started dragging him through the vestibule. When Dr. Spencer Wu started medical school, he never thought he'd completely unload a gun into an illegally acquired lab chimp, beat a one-armed security mook senseless, and then get a bluff called when he threatened to beat a puppy to death. No, he thought he'd show up in medical journals, heralded as a genius researcher coming from humble origins. And then, when he thought about it, he remembered he didn't actually want to be a fucking doctor. He wanted to be a mechanic. No mechanic in the U.S. has ever partially been mauled by an illegally purchased chimp with bits of human brain in its skull. No, they just fucking fix cars.
Shut the fuck up, or I'm making your life...
Attica! Attica!
That has some troubling implications, sure. But Florian had some other ideas. More actual security guards, most of whom didn't seem like they put up much of a fight if push came to shove, took them in as some people filed into the lobby from the first floor offices.
Help! This man is a psycho!
Ignore him. He's sundowning.
We're probably the same age. I just didn't bother with a dollar store dye job.
Besides the indignity, aside from the prying eyes, Spencer felt the air change around him, like a draft picked up from the hall behind him. One by one, people in the lobby looked nervously behind them. One man even started laughing. Spencer slowly turned behind him, as a woman wrapped in a bloody sheet strolled out from the end of the hall he'd come from. In one hand, a thin piece of metal hung like a sword. In the other, she dragged a backpack along like it weighed a ton. Something seemed cosmically warped about the sight. Something about her silhouette, or maybe the way she moved didn't entirely translate from his eyes to their brains. Graceful, catching the light just right, or something. It didn't feel like a human strode towards them, brandishing a makeshift weapon in one hand. Florian immediately got inspired for a sick painting of justice. Around the lobby, patients, nurses, nurse techs, and a grab bag of other personnel stared at the confrontation either in bemusement or terror. At least one janitor pouted as he knew he'd have to clean up all the blood. Spencer looked for a way out, but there were too many people rubbernecking in his way. He faced a monster drawing closer to him.
Oh God, no.
Hannah continued to stride.
No. What are you?
Like the fight or flight instinct did him dirty, Spencer ran at Hannah. She casually let go of the backpack and raised the IV pole.
Coagulate this.
She dropped the IV pole on the man with the thoroughly broken collarbone and stepped over him. She thought about smacking him another few times. Once for the chimp, because who else would have shot him? Once for kidnapping her in the first place. Another for what she did to Florian. And another one for eating her goddamn lunch. But no, wrath wasn't her bag.
Anna?
He wasn't sure. As they locked eyes, he swore the colors of her iris shifted, forming patterns like a spirograph. She was pretty before, lively and confident, but now, even covered in blood, she seemed regal. The fear had to be stamped down, even though the initial imprints didn't last.
Anna? Is that you?
It's me.
The crowd around the lobby murmured, some deciding to straight up bounce. It was a lot of weirdness for one day, even for a hospital in Connecticut. Though, through the crowd, another commotion began to push people around. Not that Hannah cared all that much, or that even Florian noticed.
It's me. I got out. I'm not sure how to explain it.
He had to blink his disbelief away. She scratched behind the dog's ear and waited for him to say anything.
You dissolved.
I coagulated.
His drug-addled mind tried to make sense of that for a moment. The implication that this woman reached the heights of alchemic perfection were mostly stamped down by the knowledge of all that shit was a metaphor and a series of thought experiments.
All right, let's get the fuck out of here.
Sounds great. Should we call an Uber or something?
I said move, dipshit.
Hannah turned over her shoulder to see the two weirdos from the slime incident pushing their way through the crowd. Sasha, a lithe, hippie-ish woman with a feral expression, shoved a security guard away. Before the guy could say anything, he was shoved again by a massive man with Didi braids. Simon, the other member of the support group, points at the man like he needed to chill.
It's him, Carmen. He's here.
Hannah stood and took a step back as the two came in, flanking a woman with cat-eye glasses and a truly ridiculous outfit. It took her a second to realize that this woman was in a few pictures with Florian. The sparkly Vans were tacky, yeah, no doubt, but this woman wore knee-high boots, torn jeans, and a button-up shirt with the pattern of a red cabbage, and a leather jacket with some patches on it. Her wild, curly black hair lost some color by the scalp, but it had mostly been tied back with a leopard print bandana. She made all of it work. Being that close to her made Hannah feel as though fire and lightning had taken human form. Each stopped when they really saw Hannah. Simon and Sasha even motioned for the woman to get back like this could be trouble.
Holy shit, Hannah?
The one and only.
The woman with the ridiculous outfit pushed past everyone and knelt by Florian. She didn't fight weeping in the least, as they gripped one another's shoulders. Hannah could guess some details, but she was mostly lost.
Well, we don't have to call an Uber.
What happened? Why are you like this?
I lost one of my shoes, and it's all been downhill from there.
That got Sasha to laugh nervously, which Hannah took as a win. Hannah went to grab the wheelchair, but Simon motioned to her like he had it. She very casually walked with them, watching the crowd of rubberneckers part to make way for them as they finally got some of that common sense stuff.
How much of that is yours?
Hannah jangled her backpack.
I'm not robbing the place. I brought all this.
You're hilarious. Whatever.
Hannah, can I convince you to go to the hospital? A different one? If we share a room, you can have the top bunk.
Yeah, can someone make sure the dog goes to All for Pets in New Britain?
Why are you like this? Yeah, sure, whatever.
The first breath of fresh air coated her lungs, forcing her eyes to close with serenity. She exhaled, feeling the tinge of cold air on her gore-soaked face. It was about then when the cold really dug into her. She vaguely heard someone saying something about getting the car, and she figured she had a ride out of there. With a centering, serene exhale, she opened her eyes, and her mood crashed pretty hard. The absolute chaos of the scene before her sank in. A smarmy man, who sort of resembled a younger Florian, stood outside with a silver Porsche. He lacked a heterochromia, but made up for it by having a hunting knife as long as his forearm. He seemed to be having a standoff with a pretty, slightly heavy-set young woman with snake bites. The young woman with the piercings motioned everyone to get back, revealing that she had torn clothes and poorly healed wounds beneath them. Before the panic could start, Hannah had to do a double take, as the wounds seemed to be closing slowly.
Is she with your support group too?
She sure is. Hey, Ramona, what's up?
The pretty young woman, presumably Ramona, turned back to Sasha, did a double take at Hannah, and decided the douchebag with the Porsche was a bigger issue. She nudged her head to the knife the man had, apparently taking note that it had a silver inlaid metal on the blade.
Whatever.
Hannah, however, noticed someone sitting in the passenger seat, almost watching the scene with bored indulgence. All the same, something felt very wrong, even from a distance.
It's my older brother. Hey, Benny, how many DUIs do you have?
The man took the time to flip off Florian.
It's way more than one.
Hannah wanted to dig into that, but more pressing matters were making themselves known. The door to the Porsche opened, making Florian shake his head. The air thickened like drying clay. Both Sasha and the woman with snake bites pushed Simon towards the haphazardly parked car, which they presumably arrived in.
And the asshole in the passenger seat is my dad.
A terribly smarmy man, who bore a slight resemblance to Florian, got out of the car that cost twice as much as Hannah's little economy cruiser. The geezer stood with a cane supporting him, wrapped in a long black peacoat with a gray scarf around his neck. Hannah's guts dropped as she saw his mismatched eyes, just like Florian. Percival, more tense, in the flesh, stood there appraising the situation. With a far too jovial and inviting smile, he started to walk towards them with a surprisingly sturdy gait.
You're late, and we're leaving.
Percival tilted his head at her, really taking her in. Like he finally got the joke, he hissed out the first snicker. It festered until the man cackled. Any resolve Hannah felt evaporated. All her confidence left as he clearly seemed pleased by this development. The pretty woman with snake bites looked at Florian for some direction, but he seemingly had no clue what to do. She then looked at Hannah, who couldn't help but shake her head. No, she absolutely wanted this young woman to thrash the guy silly, but something felt terribly wrong, like she'd somehow lose despite all apparent evidence.
I'll get the last laugh here.
What, did you think I'd say I'd get you and your little dog too?
She didn't want to find that funny. Simon pulled up the car, letting everyone pile in except for Hannah, still staring at Percival. She expected someone vaingloriously humorless. The cackling, strange old man had a paternal, grandfatherly quality to him that she couldn't quite shake, despite how disturbing he was.
Oh, by all means, Miss Boswell. Your ride is here.
Freezing her ass off, and terrified beyond measure, she was far too happy to get into the cramped hybrid car and head out to a different hospital. Under her feet, the ground of muscle seemed to be coated by a grass-like hair. Fleshy tubes rose around her, not terribly dissimilar from trees with branches of seizing bracteolae at their ends. Flower petals of ears and tongues bloomed open to show bloodshot eyes at their center. A worm-like appendix inched around the ground before her, before a bird with labia wings swooped down and picked it up, with a beak made of fingernails. A river of blood and bile ran beside her, spiraling deeper into a landscape of defiled flesh.
Ugh, gonna hurl.
Hannah needed to get on the whole doing enough drugs not to dream thing. She turned over on the hospital bed and looked for something to boot in, except she still had nothing in her system. She'd been in the hospital for about 8 hours by that point, and her labs hadn't come back yet. At least it wasn't the one she worked at. She hit the call button and waited for her terrified nurse to poke their head in. So far, everyone stared at her like she'd done something wrong, and besides the disgusted feeling and some hunger, she was fine, or so she hoped. And yet her nurse practically hid as they poked her head in.
Can I get something to eat?
The nurse didn't really say anything, and her nod was too slight to really notice. The bad news came when a bunch of cops showed up. Then her lawyer showed up with a woman she'd never met. Each stopped when they saw her, taken aback by something that none of them could explain. She almost got used to people doing that by then. It turned out they suspected Hannah of being a kidnap victim, which go figure, a broken clock is right occasionally. Afterwards, some news came in by text. Somebody, presumably Percival or your shitty family, scrubbed the lab. Everything was gone. Everything. And the weirdos who came to rescue Florian didn't find enough. As it turns out, the paper she printed out got burned up with the prima materia, so she wasn't working with an ounce of evidence. As for Dr. Wu, the company played the card that he wasn't technically working for them at the time. In other words, they rolled on him hard. And yet, Hannah didn't think he'd see an ounce of jail time, and she was right. A text from her program manager expressed how sorry he was for the 100th time, and said he got it cleared to give her the remaining credits for the semester. She then checked her emails to see that she had been given a new program manager, so that worked out at least. The only hang-up came with the remaining security guard, Sean or Jason, couldn't remember which name they had, and by the time anyone thought to ask, they simply disappeared without a trace. Given the nature of everything going on, Hannah at least expected something very unsubtle like revenge written on a wall with blood or something. It wasn't something she had to worry about, mostly since she was fairly sure they weren't going to be on her ass about the whole thing. Not even a full 24 hours after the ordeal started. A skeevy lawyer from the pharmaceutical company showed up with a preliminary out-of-court settlement. Hannah thought she sent a pretty clear enough message when she shredded all the paperwork in front of them. The lawyer then got chased out by Sasha, coming in with a ludicrous amount of edibles from Roswell Tobacco, High Warlock of the Bridgewater Triangle Warlock League. Anything to help the dreams stay away. Along with that, the strange woman brought her a snack, and a girl in her support group heard about her situation, bidding Sasha to bring her a tiny little wolf made out of beads, and Hannah tried not to think about how it was green.
Did the cashier do anything weird to them?
Hannah studied the raspberries in front of her.
Yeah, she reached in and took one. Real fucking weird. Whatever. Are you like psychic now or something?
I hope not.
Her text to her old classmate, Emery, didn't go so well. As it turns out, in the interim since they've known each other, Emery had been shot in the head, and while surviving, he did, however, lose a substantial amount of his memory. However, he was pretty grateful for the heads up. The text to Harper Nova Half Moon went far stranger than she would have guessed. Mainly that the potential alien, but otherwise pretty normal woman, believed her wholeheartedly. She had even suspected something had been up for a while, and then apologized to her for causing issues. After getting that stuff out of the way, they started bullshitting about cardio. Hannah seemed to get a friend out of the deal, which was kind of sick. She thought it might have been rude to ask about the whole part alien thing, but decided she didn't really care either way. It probably wouldn't even be relevant. No sir, no way, no how. By the time some of the weirder tests got back, Hannah was fully done with the hospital and wanted to go home. When she actually got discharged, she realized that she'd been zoning out, thinking about aliens for the first time since watching Arrival on a date. And while desperate to get home, she did have one more stop.
I'm glad they didn't find anything wrong.
Florian made a point to shave and style his goatee and hair. While still confined to a hospital bed, he made himself very at home. That our books, drawing pads, and Bluetooth speakers were standard on his floor, but not hers. His reaction to her was far more even-keeled the second time after seeing her. He casually sketched, peeking up a bit periodically and occasionally erasing a bit.
Feel like yourself? Everything is okay?
Yeah, I feel very much like myself. I feel fine. Unnervingly fine.
He gave a shrug like he was happy to hear it, though unwilling to dig further. Yes, she achieved rather by accident the highest goal of alchemy. The side effect of her seeming ethereal was simply what it was.
How are you holding up?
I'm so depressed. I'm going to use a cane for the rest of my life. My toes are going to be permanently numb. Here I thought I was aging well.
I'm sorry.
Staring morosely, his grin eventually warmed up a bit.
Oh, please. I'd be dead otherwise.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty great.
Florian took a second to start chuckling. There was more sadness in it than he let on.
To be honest, most of it was a blur.
Parts are for me, but not enough of it.
Well, you weren't high for most of it.
She considered that 3 people were dead, gone, and burnt without any feasible explanation. Her own culpability in the whole process wasn't here nor there, but it didn't help her feelings one iota.
Let me give you something for your trouble.
I don't get to keep the drawing?
He looked down at the sketch of her sitting in the hospital chair like she was a winsome Baroque woman.
I thought you were joking about that.
I mean, my ass better look incredible in that.
He pulled the sheet off the drawing pad and showed it to her. With a snicker, she took it like it would fall apart if she wasn't gentle.
I didn't do this for the money.
I know, but it's making me feel better. Besides, I can't imagine this would be cheap.
She knew it wasn't. Medical bills over the past year were bankrupting her. And with her doctorate program, apparently adopting a dog, and general inflation, she was financially pretty boned.
And I get the sense you won't take a penny from an out-of-court settlement.
That fully made her scowl. He glanced away, realizing that hit a nerve.
My wallet is in my pants.
She shrugged and brought it over, almost disappointed that it wasn't the Pulp Fiction bad motherfucker wallet. He opened it, and instead of pulling out a bill, he overturned it where almost 70 golden coins and what had to be 40 grand in various bills were shaken out of the thin, leathery wallet.
This is a test.
Well, everything is a test if you think about it.
I do, constantly.
No, this is me showing my gratitude. And hey, maybe how you spend it is the test.
Before I go, what's a good alchemical name for a dog?
2 syllables, alchemically sounding. Hermes?
She stuffed the coins into a plastic urinal and the bills into a clear plastic belonging bags and strolled out of the hospital with a pep in her step. Her new issue came from heading to her old job, in a desolate parking lot in New Britain that seemed to die a little more every time she showed up.
Hannah, I'm glad you're all right.
Bill, her former boss from All for Pets, seemed surprised when she showed up in a pair of shades and a black parka. He swore she glowed when he first saw her, but that must have been a trick of the light.
Hermes was great. Where on earth did you find him?
Oh, poor baby was being tested on in a lab.
Brutal. Well, I hear him. Let me grab him.
Hannah waited a few moments with the sort of undue nostalgia that comes from boredom, and not from fondness. She peeked into the main section of the store to see one of the cashiers drawing their finger along her throat like Hannah had better watch her ass. Finally, she saw the little Doberman, eagerly trying to get out of Bill's arms and run up to her. And yet something was different.
I don't know why your dog turned green.
She looked at Hermes wagging his nubbly tail. She opened her arms and looked the little puppy up to her. She saw the fur growing back and the last of the scar scabbing over. The little guy was on the mend. But yeah, he turned green.
Oh yeah, that's fine. It happens.